Hi, I'm John Sauve, and this is Design. Today, our guest is Tim Bennett from Urbana. Tim, thanks for coming on the show.
Morning, how are you?
Good. Hey, Tim, what's your official title?
I am Executive Director of Parks and Recreation for the Urbana Park District. I'm also a registered landscape architect in the state of Illinois.
So, why did you go into landscape architecture?
Well, that's a great question. One of my early interests in high school was certainly in biology and the outdoor world. I was really drawn to nature. I started in horticulture right out of college when I got started with my career. Finished the horticulture sequence at Illinois State University. And one of my last classes I took in that sequence was landscape design. And I really got interested in that, starting at the small scale. Started to do some research and found out that the University of Illinois had a landscape architecture program. So I applied, transfer, and finished my undergraduate degree in 1989. And then I stuck around the university to do my master's work and finished up in 1992.
And so this idea of landscape architecture, it's the exterior of every building, and it's a really important part of the landscape, literally speaking, because it's the first thing you encounter. As you went in through the program, what became most interesting to you?
Well, I was really taken by the idea that, when I think of architecture and buildings and sort of the built world, that's really neat. But then when I really look at what landscape architects do, it's kind of everything in between. So when we look at the outdoor world, that's really kind of our palette, if you will, creating amazing designs, transforming landscapes, and then certainly working with natural systems in our world.
Well, so Tim, since you're a vital part of everything architecture has to offer, because you're really the entryway to everything, how did you make that transition from landscape architecture to Parks and Rec? It's not like it's a big transition, but it is a different take on it, right?
It is. I feel very fortunate. When I finished my master's work, I'd done some local part-time work for the city of Urbana. So I got a little experience with their urban tree program. We had some really amazing, interesting landscapes that we worked on. So I applied for the planning position that opened at the Urbana Park District, and I was hired. And probably my experience working in the city and the university gave me a leg up. But I really saw an opportunity to kind of bring art into the landscape. There's so many beautiful sort of natural landscapes, and really working kind of in an artistic way to accentuate sort of our built environment. So using all kinds of artistic elements, including sculpture, really has served me well.
So what was the first endeavor when it came to public art? Because I know that's what we're leading to right now.
Well, it's a great question. I was through a number of student projects and then leading up to my career work. When I started at the Park District, one of the projects I was hired for was to bring as new development to a park called Meadowbrook Park. And I was really interested when I interviewed and toured here at the Park District way back then in 1992 with this very large park. It was 130 acres. It had not been developed, was still in a corn and bean sort of a agricultural landscape format. But I could tell that it had a lot of really interesting things and held a lot of promise. One of the components that was planned for in that project was a sculpture park. And as I understand it, way back in the 1970s, the Park District worked with their advisory committee, which is a citizen-led advisory group that advises the board on all the matters of the Park District, started to recommend a new kind of park type for this Meadowbrook Park. It was highly based on a naturalized landscape using our native ecosystems of native prairie, wetlands, and woodlands pulled together into an amazing 130-acre park. As part of that, there was a plan for a sculpture park, and that really wasn't defined. And as I began to work with our staff and our community on really sort of interpreting what that could be, we found that the sort of the prairie landscape of Illinois created an enormous background where we could introduce all types of large-scale sculptures of different materials and different themes that set really well in this naturalized setting. So it really drew a lot of people. And I think that interesting juxtaposition of native landscape with highly contrived art really sparks and creates something interesting. Our theme sort of emerged out of that into idea of kind of how people, nature, and art all intersect each other. So man plus art plus nature was sort of our overarching theme.
Tim, just to recap, you were given the task of following the recommendations from the early 70s as you came on board with this Meadowbrook Park. And so really you had a blank canvas to do whatever you wanted in designing this 130-acre plot, including public art in it and including the native plants. Is that how it worked?
Yes, it essentially did. We had a donor family, Jeff and Charlotte Wandell, who wanted to honor their parents, and their siblings joined together to make a donation to establish the Wandell Sculpture Garden. So that's kind of the formal section of the park that hosts and contains a lot of the public art. But since that early time, I think we started back in about 1998, 97, 98, started introducing the art there. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary, the Wandell Sculpture Garden. So with that early gift, it helped us establish sort of a native palette of prairie grasses. There was a large tree donation. The family had run a sort of a tree nursery over the years, so they were willing and ready to donate a lot of the native trees. So we took that and we worked it into the site to create really a nice plan of open space covered with trees, and then other areas that were just open, vast prairie. So that kind of set up a really wonderful creation so that we could celebrate the daily fluctuation of the sunlight, the rising of the sun, through those seasonal interests, and then certainly throughout the seasons, summer, fall, spring, even winter time with the cold and snow, brings a really interesting look to the art when it's covered in snow.
Well, Tim, I'm so excited about this story because here you're given this chance to create right from the inception, the idea. You were given a couple guidelines, but essentially you created this park that just celebrated 25 years. Did you look to other parks for references before you got started?
It's a great question. I did do a lot of research. Kind of our team went to visit quite a few sculpture parks. And by and large, what we saw was really a kind of a variety. Most often, maybe a formal estate, whether it be a large home or maybe a remnant mansion type setup. Typically was more manicured lawns, large, sort of a museum sort of approach. And so while we can appreciate that, and that might be a lot of people's typical ideas of museums or sculpture parks, we took a little bit different bend, and we really went with celebrating the Illinois prairie. So again, large areas of beautiful wild flowers, forbs, that would bloom in the spring throughout the summer and into the fall. And then the tall grasses that really start up, from the early spring burns, emerging out of the grounds, turning green shoots, and then shooting up clear into the late fall, where you get some of those beautiful reds and orange colors in the tall grasses. So this sort of palette really created a very different experience. And what we found and heard from the visitors is they could come out and immerse themselves in a sort of a natural experience, feeling like they were out in nature, and at the same time experiencing these very large and powerful pieces of artwork. So we sort of left it up to the visitor and the interpreter to, kind of determine their own journey and what that means for them. A little more recently, we're starting to work on a sculpture interpretive node in the park where we can explain a little bit about the artwork, why we have it, and maybe at least some of the initial founding meanings. But we really celebrate the idea that each person can interpret it the way they choose to.
So what can someone expect when they approach the Wandell Sculpture Park?
Well, it really depends on, I'd say, the time of the year that you'd come. Assuming you come in maybe the warmer seasons, generally what draws people are the long and winding paths that go through the park. We have a series of what we call large loops and short loops that direct the visitor to the all the areas in the park, get you around the site. We have a large playground that sort of welcomes people on the north side, which is kind of seen as maybe the formal or the front door of the park. From there, you can span south and go through the native prairies, loop through the sculpture park. And then on the kind of the southwest corner of the park, we have a historic farmstead, which is actually the farmhouse, and we've retained the barn and the corn crib of the original farm that ran, the land surrounding Meadowbrook. In that area, we've created a number of gardens that we call the gardens at Meadowbrook, so people can walk through sensory gardens, tree gardens, to really learn all the plants, see beautiful compositions of color, texture, form, and then spread out amongst that is the sculpture pieces. The way we do that is we have kind of a loan program primarily where pieces come for a 2-year window and they'll stay on the site. Often they're retained for another extension, but sometimes they go away. And the idea is that we want to create sort of a fresh experience. So whenever you come, hopefully there'll be new art. And then we do have a few pieces that have been retained that are part of our permanent collection. And we've located those in areas that really accentuate the setting. So it might be on a rise of land or with a beautiful backdrop of native trees. So that, in its permanency in the park, it still creates that wonderful dynamic that's sort of shaped by that surrounding landscape.
Well, Tim, as director of Parks and Rec, you have a lot of other things on your plate. This is just one of many things that you do. And I think it's amazing that you've taken on this task, especially going into your 25th year. What other things can you encounter in Urbana as far as Parks and Rec?
Well, we have a really, as I mentioned, kind of a unique community here in Urbana. I think there is really an arts and culture focus here. So one of the things we spend a lot of time on is our arts and culture matrix. And that's where we have representation staff from all the areas of our operation that come together to look at how do we create more artful and cultural experiences in Urbana. So we really try to weave that into all of our activities, special events, whether it's music, temporary art, exhibits, interpretation throughout the Park District. We also do more traditional things, exercise, athletics, all the kind of the different experiences you would expect. We do have a nature center, so that really ties in well with our environmental ethic. And we have a large number of parks that have more of a natural bend. So including Meadowbrook Park with the large prairie, that fits in really well for a lot of our school tours, our environmental education programs. So again, we kind of wrap our art and nature around all of our parks and our themes, while we're still doing more traditional things like sports, soccer, and fitness type programs throughout the community.
Well, sports, I just like any community, they take up so much time. I am so excited that you have all these other aspects to Parks and Rec to offer the community, because sports is a full-time job. And then in addition to that, to maintain these parks and then add these extra features and incorporate them into the landscape, you're to be commended on your approach. I'm very excited about it. So what is there an artistic community that has a hand in on some of the projects, especially with Wandela's Sculpture Park?
Well, I think Urbana's really kind of created a unique environment. We're getting a lot of attention, a lot of visitors, come from kind of our nearby towns. We're really kind of situated in the middle of Chicago, St. Louis, and Indianapolis. So within a short drive, you can really come and experience a very unique park district and certainly the sculpture garden. One of our goals is also to incorporate public art into all of our major facilities. So each of our main buildings are planned to have a large piece of public art. And then throughout our major parks of our neighborhood, community, and signature parks, we want to integrate art into that as well. And then again, the art education is another level that we're trying to exceed to, where we would start doing school tours. Right now we do nature tours, bring people out to our parks from our local schools and give them an experience in teaching them about our native landscapes. We want to do the same thing with our art collection, offer that to our local schools, and hopefully that'll fill maybe some of their art requirements, but really get students out walking and experiencing nature while they're viewing these large art pieces. And we have other types of art in the park. We have a number of murals. Our gardens, again, as a landscape architect, I think that our gardens are art. They're highly designed and have a lot of the design elements built in. So again, your visit to Meadowbrook Park is usually kind of a cultural dip into our overall arts and cultures that we offer here in Urbana.
Wow, Tim, it sounds amazing, and from the approach again, Parks and Rec. I work with a lot of different departments around the country, really, and for you to take this on, I think is number one an amazing thing. But to celebrate your 25th year, when you took this on from the very start, did you know what you were getting into?
Well, it's kind of interesting. That's a great question. I know I mentioned the advisory committee way back in the 70s, kind of cast that vision for this highly naturalistic outdoor gallery. Was very fortunate to work with one of our former directors, Robin Hall. He really had captured this vision and had made the connections with the Wandel family during his time at the Park District, set us up. And one of the other things that sort of led to our success, kind of sparked our opportunity, was there was a large outdoor sculpture venue in Chicago called Navy Pier. And they had, I think, a 3-year run where they brought in lots and lots of public art out on the pier that jutted out into Lake Michigan. After that show ran, I think it was its 3rd year, it was closing down. A lot of the artists were looking for new homes that were nearby that they could maybe relocate their sculpture. So we took advantage of that opportunity, working with a number of artists. We brought probably 8 pieces down in that first window. And so we kind of got a kickstart to our program. And I think when people saw what the art could really do and how it looked here in the garden, that really just created a kind of a dialogue in the community of wanting more, wondering what the next introduction would be. And so that was just kind of like saying sick 'em to a dog. We just ran with it. As many people that we could meet, artists that we could connect with, kind of through word of mouth, people that they knew. We really found a large number of artists that we could work with. We started to rotate pieces in and out, and the program took off right after that.
I think it's fantastic. In the just that you were open to different ideas and different approaches and opportunities. Opportunities are the most important thing, of course. But this wasn't a one-off, and that's what I'm most excited about with the project. You're celebrating your 25th year. That's huge. That's a milestone. What does the future entail?
Well, we hope we can continue to keep bringing high quality art to Urbana. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all of our artists. We've just worked with an amazing amount of people, each one of them bringing something special, unique, or different with their art and their styles. And so through those unique relationships, we continue to grow and expand, meet more artists. One of the things we're very committed to is really supporting the artists to make sure that they can, have a livelihood that allows them to create their art. If they're not able to do that, we're not going to be able to provide it in our community. So this sort of symbiotic relationship of seeking out, finding new artists, trying to bring their work here to be able to pay them for their services and make sure that we have funds, to support their work is really critical. I'd love to see us venture out into some new areas. One area that I've talked a lot about is finding underrepresented artists, people of color, different backgrounds, that might create some really new and different experiences to really bring some diversity of background to our art. We also see an opportunity to work with youth. We'd love to do a youth-driven sculpture program or a show where we could celebrate maybe area-wide or local youth and their work. And then another area that we've talked about is kind of an artist in residence program. The idea that we'd love to be able to bring someone here. Maybe they could stay, for example, for a summer, teach art and design to our arts camps, and then maybe create a piece of art that they could leave behind here at Meadowbrook after their visit here in Urbana.
Well, I'm excited for the ideas in the future of what you've got planned. How is it working with the city? Have they bought into the project? Obviously, it's 25 years, but it fluctuates, it changes. Overall, what has been the approach when you do work with the city?
Yeah, I think it's very positive. In Illinois, we're a little unique. We have separate park districts. We have separate special districts. So we're our own unit of government. We have our own tax base. We have our own elected park commissioners. But we do work very well with our city and school and library partners. Obviously, they're very interested in the art and the experience and what it brings for our residents. The city of Urbana has their own public arts program. I would like to think we spurred maybe some of the inspiration from our work here, but they also offer what I'd call municipal art in downtown squares and different areas. They support a variety of other artists in visual arts and performing arts. So it's a really good relationship. We have a dynamic school that has, a number of artistic aspects of performance and display. And then our local library also is an open door. They're very supportive. Anytime we can work together, we'd love to do that. One of the things we did during the COVID period, just an example that's kind of art-based and really came out of our arts and culture, working with the Urbana Free Library, was doing story walks, where we put large storyboards of book stories in a park. And as you walk through the park, you could, walk with your family or an individual, read the stories, and have another experience while you're walking, getting exercise, and enjoying the outdoors. So again, there's plenty of room here in Urbana for the art expression. I think we're yet to just kind of discover all the forms and types that we can involve ourselves in. And we welcome anyone to contact us and reach out if they have ideas or would like to explore more art. I know one last thing that I'm really interested in and would love to see happen. We have a couple of large natural areas that I mentioned, woodlands, wetlands, and prairies. And we'd love to try to think of maybe an art exhibit or a special show that we could work with environmental artists to transform those spaces into an art gallery experience, really that elevates, the aspects of prairie, woodland, or wetland. So I think that would be another exciting show or exhibit that we could look to in the future.
So, Tim, in the last 25 years, is there anything that that happened as a result of your working on the park, and especially as it relates to public art, that was completely unexpected, that you said, I never thought this could happen? Any stories that really stick with you?
Well, the one thing I have to think about is about a year ago, we were contacted by the Chicago Tribune. They were putting together a article or sort of a guide of the top 10 sculpture parks within an easy drive from Chicago. And we were so fortunate to make that list. There are other notable, larger, well-known sculpture parks on that list. So we felt like we really arrived and that we kind of sort of reached our, stride, or not necessarily our pinnacle, because I think we have a long way to go and a lot more to achieve. But that sort of helped us realize that we were in good company and that it's not unrealistic that somebody that did live in Chicago or Indianapolis or St. Louis would take a short drive of a couple hours, to come visit us in Urbana and spend a day at the Meadowbrook Park and enjoy the Wandell Sculpture Garden. So I was really surprised, that was one of our outcomes. The other things that I'm really touched by and also surprised is the number of donors that we've had that, people really get excited. They've reached out, they've wanted to sponsor pieces. Maybe it's pieces they haven't even really seen or know about the artist. They just want to help and be a part of that. So that deep generosity and that deep connection of getting people, involved financially has been very rewarding. To me, that shows that there's a lot of support for the program, and that, the folks that maybe have the resources that can, support that, help do that for the rest of the community. So again, it's another really interesting symbiotic relationship of folks that have maybe resource that want to transform that into a community experience. And then we bring in the art, place it in the landscape, and create that opportunity for people to really engage and enjoy all that that has to offer.
If you build it.
Absolutely.
So, Tim, so this is the time for the commercial break. How do people find the Wandell Sculpture Park and the other projects that you have throughout the Parks District? How can people find out more information about it?
Well, the easiest thing is check out our website, www.urbanaparks.org. That's urbanaparks.org. That'll take you to our website where you'll find Meadowbrook Park and the Wandell Sculpture Garden. Within that, we have a really neat tool that our staff put together. It's basically an art and culture guide. You can click on that and it takes you through all of our parks and facilities where art and culture is located. Obviously, the majority of the pieces are at Meadowbrook Park, but we do have some other interesting artistic and cultural artifacts throughout the district. So we encourage people to check that out and come take a look. Again, you can sort of walk through Meadowbrook Park, see the art, learn a little about the artists, maybe the artist statements. And so that's a kind of an easy on-ramp. Obviously, if you're coming to visit, you can give us a call. Our phone number is there. I'd be happy to set up a visit or a tour with anybody. And again, we have a number of staff that would be happy to show people around. We don't have a formal like organized tour program or set tours on set days at set times. But if somebody's really interested in getting a little more background or would want to spend some time learning about the sculpture park, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to accommodate you, spend time with you, and make sure that you leave with a lot of experiences of what we offer at the Wandell Sculpture Garden.
Tim, one last thing. You mentioned it previously, that if people want to contribute in any way, what would be the best way for them to support what you have going on?
I'd say reach out in our website. We have under staff, you'll find me there. That's probably the easiest connection. Kelsey Beckew is our development manager. She's also on our website also and could help out anybody. But give us a call. My number is area code 217-367-1536. That's area code 217-367-1536. And that'll connect us right here at our administrative office, and I'd be happy to talk to you. We'd love to work with any businesses, any corporate entities. So again, it can be anybody that has an interest or a desire to help us expand our art.
What's the website again?
It's www.urbanaparks.org. That's URBANAPARKS.org. You can find us there, and there's a whole lot more information about our park district and what we have to offer. So please check us out.
Tim, I got to tell you, I really appreciate this introduction to Urbana Parks and the Wandell Sculpture Park and what you can find if you venture out to see the park. It's amazing stuff that you have going on. Congratulations on celebrating your 25th anniversary. That's a testament to you and what you've created there. And I'm really excited about coming out and seeing the park. So thanks for coming on the Art and Design Show today.
Wonderful. And also want to thank all of our staff, board, and community for supporting public art.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.